I, 30 male, got married 2 weeks ago. I was married before, but it ended after I found out that my older brother Thomas, male 34, got involved with my first wife. It was devastating because we were close and had a great relationship. I also helped him so much while he was struggling, and seeing how he repaid me hurts to this very day. I stopped talking to him, and Mom and Dad forced me to keep it a secret, and because I was too weak to argue with them, I just kept my own distance. Then I met my now wife. My family loved and embraced her as their own. Mom and Dad treat her like a queen, which helped repair and solidify my relationship with them. However, as the wedding was approaching, they told me they expected me to invite Thomas. I of course refused, but they kept guilting me about what the other relatives and other guests would think and say when they don't see Thomas there. I fought with them about it till the day of the wedding. Turned out, they'd invited him behind my back, but I found out and stopped them in time. They came to the wedding looking pissed, asking what we were going to tell people when they asked about Thomas. I told them I'd take care of it. And what I did was take a moment while everyone was paying attention, grabbed the mic, and flat out announced this and said, "The reason I didn't invite Thomas to my wedding is because I was worried he'd steal my now wife, just like he stole the first one." I said it playfully to not make it sound too tense, but most of the guests looked shocked and started mumbling. Then it went awkwardly quiet for a moment. Then we moved on, but I saw Mom and Dad walk out while looking at me grudgingly. Later, they started lashing out about how I exposed Thomas and caused him to be shunned by the family in the most hideous of ways. I told them that I already said I didn't want him there, yet they tried to push him on me repeatedly, saying, "What are people going to say?" So I told them the reason why he wasn't there in a playful way, but they, the guests, still got the message. Mom started yelling about how everyone will now look down on and shun Thomas. She called me pathetic and cruel for still punishing him and gradually ruining his life, despite him apologizing and trying to reconcile. But in my opinion, some things are just unforgivable. We've been on horrible terms since then. Am I the a-hole? My wife said at least now they're off my back about what people would say about not inviting him. Not the a-hole. Your brother brought it on himself and your parents. Good grief. If that was how they repaid you in terms of repairing the relationship, then perhaps you are better off without them, and I don't often suggest no contact. Not the a-hole. If they'd respected your wishes, it wouldn't have gotten to that point. Inviting him behind your back is just wrong. I can see how they'd want you and your brother to have a relationship, but your brother destroyed that, and it's up to you when or if you ever want to have a relationship with him again. Also, it sounds like they're probably more concerned about the shame of people knowing what he did, which is also not your problem. My wife, 33 female, and I, 35 male, recently got married. We decided on a child-free wedding because we wanted people to be able to relax, have a good time, and not have to worry about screaming babies. My mother-in-law, when asked about this, told every one of her relatives that they, of course, were an exception, and we would be delighted to welcome their children. By the time we learned of this, flights and hotels had already been booked, and mother-in-law threw up her hands and said, "Well, what was I supposed to tell people to do with their children?" After offering some suggestions about what they could do, some further suggestions as to where she could stick what, and using a few words a lot more harsh than a-hole, my father-in-law stepped in, apologized, and we came to an agreement. We would allow the children to attend. Mother-in-law and father-in-law would pay for all additional headcount. Everyone would be told that they were responsible for keeping their children under control, and if they didn't, they would be removed. This meant babies were to be brought into the cry room at the church if crying. Children were not to run around the reception, and no part of the ceremony was to be interrupted. I had the absolute right to have someone removed if their children were not under control. Mother-in-law took this to mean that if someone's kids were acting up, she'd have time to address it and fix things. I will admit, people were good for the most part. We had a few babies crying in the church, a few kids being loud, but their parents kept them under control and quieted them. Then came our first dance. We were about a minute into the song when I heard people start laughing and whooping. I looked over to see a child had run onto the dance floor and started dancing with her arms in the air. I recognized her as the 2-year-old daughter of my wife's cousin. I looked around for her mother and found her laughing and filming her daughter on her cell phone. When we finished our dance, I walked over to the venue staff and instructed them to remove her and her daughter from the reception. 2 minutes later, my mother-in-law came flying over screaming that she didn't do anything wrong and I couldn't remove her. I replied that she had broken the rules. This is why I didn't want children there, and she had to go. My wife agrees with me but feels badly that her cousin traveled from Louisiana and had to leave the reception. She also hates that her mother is not speaking to us anymore. Her mom says that I am cruel, evil, and hate children. Father-in-law agrees that the rules were broken and I had the right to kick them out, but thinks a warning would have been appropriate. I contend that we only get one first dance, and knowing what would happen, rather than try to control the situation, her cousin decided to laugh and film her daughter ruining our first dance. Had she got her daughter off the dance floor immediately after it happened, I would not have done anything. Not the a-hole. The cousin cared more about making a funny video than respecting your first dance at your wedding reception. You could have spent all night issuing warnings, or you could have enjoyed your reception. You chose to act quickly and then enjoy it. Not the a-hole. I think there is no better time than the wedding to let an in-law know that you are not going to put up with any of their crap. I have little doubt that mother-in-law has been like this her whole life. Her attempt to take control of your wedding was a total power move from the get-go, and you did well to shut it down when you did. Not the a-hole. Your mother-in-law should have told people to ask you and/or your wife directly if she was uncomfortable telling them no children to begin with. And you're definitely not the a-hole for asking the cousin and child to leave. I would be frustrated too if I didn't want children there, made an exception, and then our first dance was ruined by a child. Mother-in-law will come around once she gets over herself. I know I sound like a horrible sister, but honestly, I don't know how my sister expects me to react. In May, she suspected her boyfriend was cheating on her because he kept working overnights all of a sudden and was acting distant. They have 2 kids together and live together. She never found out who the woman was until all of a sudden her boyfriend came home and said that he had been robbed of his car and money, but to not call the police. My sister was suspicious, but she listens to everything he says, so she didn't. None of us even knew this happened. After a few weeks, he started getting antsy and admitted to my sister that the car was never stolen, and he had let a woman he had been sleeping with borrow it while hers was in the shop, and he gave her money too. But she found out he has a girlfriend and kids, and she angrily crashed the car somewhere and blocked him, and now he wants to press charges. Turns out, he was lying to this girl saying he's single, doesn't have any kids, etc. He doesn't let my sister post him on her page, and he doesn't post her or their kids, so it's believable. My sister was pissed at the girl for getting revenge on her boyfriend. The car is his, she has her own she pays for, even though her boyfriend was the one cheating and lying. Turns out, this other woman is my friend's cousin, the friend that I'm supposed to be a bridesmaid for next spring. She's going to be another bridesmaid. When I found this out, my sister told me she expects me to drop out of the wedding and that my friend is fake if she doesn't understand. I told her that I don't get why I should get involved in her problems when, from what her boyfriend is telling her, he's been blocked. And it's not like I have to be best friends with her at the wedding. My sister says it makes her look dumb. But her boyfriend has cheated on her before, too. She's been mad at me since I've been saying no and says I'm an a-hole, and no sister would do that to her sister. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your sister needs to focus on her cheating boyfriend, not you, not the other woman. You can't control who your friend is related to or friends with. Not the a-hole. Your sister is right to be mad at her ex-boyfriend for lying and for potentially exposing her to STDs. Not saying the other woman has any, but your sister doesn't know that woman's sexual health history. That said, your sister is aiming her anger on the wrong person. The other woman wasn't aware he has a girlfriend or kids. He also lied to her. That said, the boyfriend can press charges against the other woman for wrecking the car, and that's his choice. You, not the a-hole. Sister, total a-hole for getting you involved. Boyfriend, total a-hole for lying. Other woman, not the a-hole for being the other woman, but the a-hole for wrecking his car. I, 29 male, do not have the best relationship with my parents. I was mostly raised by my both sets of grandparents, uncles, and aunts, because both of them were always on work trips together. They both worked as cruise guides, that's where they met, and they would leave for a month, come back for 3 days, and leave for another one. I only remember a handful of times as the classic family portrait, sitting, eating a dinner at my first 15 years. When I was 15, they decided to retire and manage a local tourism company with the support of my both sets of grandparents. Even then, they did not have shown interest in me. I would be off for a week without saying anything, and they would not notice. They never showed up to any major events. All the other family members would be there, though. At my last year, I have met with a girl, 29 female. At my last year of medical, 2015 school. We have become a couple and had a slow but steadily building relationship. My family instantly liked her, and she was a part of ours. Her family was also really warm against me. My parents did not show any signs of interest to meet her until we have dated for 3 years, and it was just a 30-minute coffee. We decided to get married, and with that announcement, my parents have become the nosiest people I have ever known. My mom has started to call, what were we planning for my big day? My dad was talking about the responsibilities of being a husband and a dad, like he really ever had been one, etc. The truth is, we were only planning a courthouse wedding for the families, and then have a party with our friends and cousins. I told them this, and they were furious. They tried to pick fights with us for 3 weeks by calling us, trying to visit us, mocking every relative alive, including my in-laws. After not seeing any interest, they stopped. In July 2019, I got married. They have come, sit in the background. My grandmothers were the one in the aisle with me. Just said, "Congratulations," and left. In our wedding party, we were originally planning just to include our friends and cousins, but her uncle has a big farmhouse, literally a mansion, so we have invited 100 people, plus our families, except my mom and dad. While we were there, chilling, before the party, my dad called and said, "It was only friends, you said. How can you exclude your parents? We are coming, and we are not going to leave." He was mad, and I have informed the security of the house to not let them in, and to call the cops if needed. They tried to bust in with their car by trying to break the gate, and they were arrested for the night. We also have gotten an RO. The case is not urgent, so it is not going to be seen this year, but all of our family says we are going too far for pressing charges on them. We do not think so, and it is causing a fight between us and our families, and as a personal reason, I want them to suffer from the loneliness and sadness they made me feel. Am I the a-hole? Edit to the infos. I am not from an English-based country, and I am from the EU. I am half Turkish and half French. Bonjour, mes amis. Hapanis, mahaba. I have to open the court if I ever want to have a permanent RO. I also work with an attorney who is experienced on the issue, and it is mostly certain that they will take a minor jail detention, which will probably be turned to a fine, and there is nothing, as civil and criminal court, if there is even a damage on the property at France. This event happened in France. I can also get a negotiator though, and it seems the more legit way. If we did not rent the place from her uncle, which we rented for €2.50, but there is a legal paper, so it is rented. He would be the one to open the court, but technically, I have rented the place for the night, so it shall be me. Also, they broke the door and gave some damage to the property. We have pressed 2 charges on them, harassment and damage on the property. They broke the door and gave some real damage to the shed of the gardener. I'm not going to act as a good guy. I want vengeance, and I know it is petty, but I want it. I want them to pay for what they have done, and I want them to suffer in front of my eyes, and I want to be the one who will give the pain. I have some negative sides, and I can be really vindictive. I am in therapy though since medical school, and it is really helping me to accept that side of mine. I had some traumas and therapy really helped me to embrace them and use it to my advantage. I know this might be a real a-hole-ish thought, but I can't help feeling it. I want to step to the court, puke all my anger, wrath, and vengeance on them in the public, then leave. I dream that moment to come. Also, my parents do not engage with the larger family, not that much, except funerals and weddings. It is a real rare thing to see them. I know they, my big family, want the best for all of us, but I can't want the best for my parents. I just can't. Not the a-hole, and I would press charges, if not for this event alone, but for any future issues, so that they know you guys are dead serious about not allowing any interference. It is hard to tell for me who is the a-hole here. Your parents seem to be totally apathetic towards your life, as if you weren't planned to be, and always had been a mistake or so. But when you seem to get successful, they suddenly pop to the foreground. I guess your other family knows they are kind of unhealthy people. But then they start to stir turmoil. Why? Maybe they think success equals gain and try to patch things up quickly so they can profit from it. For the sake of peace and your other family, I'd have advised to have them around on the wedding. Everyone knew they're weird already, so I don't think anyone would have taken them seriously. It would have prevented you so much trouble, and just maintained their distance after. But okay, it escalated. And you're talking of vengeance by suing them. I think your other family is right to say that goes a bit far, because it will cause harm to your family as a whole, in terms of peace and reputation. Not the a-hole, but find a different solution that does not light fires of hate. And keep in mind, your success is a big thing your parents will never have. That's the best revenge. I have mixed feelings here. I'm not really sure why you tried to exclude them from the wedding party. Calling it your big day and pressuring you to hold a wedding ceremony isn't exactly beyond all bounds of decency, even if it was intrusive. They are obviously the a-hole for trying to break down the gate to get in. But I think you are the a-hole for trying to exclude your parents from your wedding party for behavior that, even if annoying, petty, and immature, is beneath the level that most would require in order to take a step as drastic as exclusion of parents from wedding. Regarding the suing, I can't tell whether you mean civil or criminal proceedings, but it would certainly be better if you could work out some kind of restitution with them rather than using the courts. Everyone sucks here. Update. So I thought I would update you after the court, but some stuff happened. They have tried to invade our house while we were at work. On September 3rd, we were called by the police, saying that our alarm alerted them, and they have found my mom in the car waiting and my dad trying to escape with all of the legal files according to the court. They have tried to reach all of the family, but no one opened their calls as normal. They have invaded the house to take our papers about the court. I don't know what it will give them still. Since they have invaded our privacy and broke their temporary RO, court will press charges and they are currently in home detention with electronic cuffs. They both have chronic issues, so prison is not the best option in this state of world. Also, you were right. I have started more rigorous therapy sessions and got a month off from work to get myself on the feet. I have issues so much in deep, and it is surging, but I am going to be fine. My wife has become my greatest support, and my family is helping me on everything, so that is that.